Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Welcome, everyone, to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so happy that you could join us this evening. This week is World FTD Awareness Week. What is FTD, you might ask? Well, you're in the right place at the right time because we're going to find out today all about it. Today, I'll be talking to representatives from the Association for Frontal Temporal Degeneration in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And we're going to talk about what this is, what it means for caregivers and families, and what we're doing about it. Much like Alzheimer's or other dementia, it's not. We're going to find out the differences. And I'm so excited to welcome 3 representatives joining me online today. The first one is Matt Ozga. Matt is the AFTD Communication Manager. I also have Brittany Andrews. Brittany is the Fundraising Coordinator for AFTD in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And also Dawn O'Gara. And Dawn is a caregiver and a volunteer. So welcome to all of you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So glad that you're all here joining us and to talk about what FTD is. Some caregivers may already know what it is because maybe they are dealing with that right now. Maybe they are a caregiver for someone who has FTD, but it's something that is needs to be talked about more. Therefore, this week, World FTD Awareness Week. So let's start off with you, Matt, and explain what exactly is FTD.
Well, FTD stands for frontotemporal degeneration, and it refers to a group of progressive neurological diseases that affect the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. So these are the parts of the brain that regulate your personality, your kind of everything that makes you yourself. This is what these 2 portions of the brain affect, and it's like the disease itself is a deterioration of the brain in these 2 specific regions that eventually causes dementia. Is the symptom that it causes.
So when you say frontal temporal, the frontal lobe is here, right, in the front, like where our forehead is, and the temporal part is over here, like where your temples are, but that's the region that you're actually referring to. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yeah, and the temporal lobe, my understanding is that the temporal lobe is more of more controls your movement, and the frontal is more about personality, but it's not an exact science. There's, the brain is a complex organ, and there's a lot going on up there.
And the bottom line, as you mentioned, is it's a progressive degeneration of the brain that ultimately causes dementia. So that being said, Matt, how would FTD differ from, let's say, Alzheimer's disease?
Well, I think when most people think of Alzheimer's, they think of memory, because this is that's the part of the brain that Alzheimer's focuses on, is the memory region. With FTD, memory is not so much affected. In fact, it can often be relatively well preserved. Um, the most common effects of FTD on the brain are affecting one's personality, one's behavior, one's ability to speak and understand language, and also their movement. Um, and the other main difference between Alzheimer's and FTD is that FTD generally affects younger people. It's actually the most common type of dementia for people under the age of 60. And we've seen typically people get it around the age 45 to 64 range. But in our work, we've seen it in people as young as 21. And it can also affect older people as well. But I think really the fact that it affects people at such a young age, it's really very uniquely devastating in terms of how it can just tear the fabric of one's family life apart. It affects people in their prime earning years, so they can no longer work their jobs. They may have children in the home, teenagers. So it's really kind of a uniquely devastating disease. And as you mentioned, not enough people know about it, but that's what our work is for.
Right. There are a lot of people that say dementia is dementia, but all dementias are different depending upon, what the cause are, what part of the brain. And as you mentioned, like Alzheimer's, it's more of the hippocampus area of the brain affecting where the memories are stored. And this particular disease is in a different part of the brain, so it's affecting the person differently. So, Matt, you said a couple of things about what the disease, how it affects the person. For instance, you talked about their movements. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Is it similar to Parkinson's in that respect?
There are similarities to Parkinson's. With regard to the movement difficulties that someone with FTD might experience, you see things like their muscles start to atrophy, they lose their grip strength in some cases, it may affect their fine motor skills. There's a significant overlap between, and that we're still continuing to understand between FTD and ALS. And in addition to the movement, there's also the language difficulties, which, as I mentioned, people have a hard time understanding language. They may lose the ability to read and write. And I think for a lot of people dealing with FTD, the behavioral changes, the changes to the personalities, these can be the most kind of pernicious, the most really kind of devastating to families, because they sort of take effect gradually over time. And we've seen people with FTD just acting in very strange kind of antisocial ways. They may lose their filter. They may say inappropriate things in public. They could, invade strangers' personal space. There's a lot of impaired judgment involved. They may be apathetic toward things that they were once passionate about. Like they could have been a great accountant or a great lawyer, and they just they just don't care anymore. There's a lot of ritualistic behaviors are not uncommon. Pacing, strange eating habits. They may consume nothing but candy. So it's this sort of this total change in your personality and everything that makes you you. FTD can affect.
Well, as I'm listening to you, it reminds me of a lady I once had an occasion to be around that was actually diagnosed with FTD, and she didn't speak at all. She just didn't talk. She never really uttered any sounds. And she had some ritualistic behavior like what you're talking about, along with her pacing. And she would pace all the time, and she was the kind of person who had to go and fix little things, and she was almost fixated on doing and fixing. And when she did that, she actually did invade other people's space, had really no sense of boundary. If you were had a blouse on and your tag in the back of your shirt was sticking out, she would just go right up and she had to fix it. And so she would be always on the hunt for things that she could fix or change or move, and always pacing but never saying a word. And mostly her eyes were not real demonstrative either. She really didn't have any light in her eyes. They were almost kind of fixated. So that sounds like somebody, with all the signs and symptoms that you were talking about.
Yeah, everything you just described is kind of textbook FTD. We've heard things about people who may go into their backyard and just compulsively pick up every leaf that they see, or walk up and down the street and just collect trash. And the thing that you mentioned about the lack of spark in one's eyes, that's another thing that happens frequently. People just lose their sense of empathy. They don't, you could come up to them and say, you're having a terrible day, and the fact that you got FTD, it makes me really sad. You're my wife, you're my husband, whatever. And their response may just be, oh, well, that's just their brain. The part of the brain that makes them empathetic just no longer functions in the correct way.
Yeah, and I didn't mention, but she was fairly young too. She was married and she was in her 50s when she was diagnosed. So, everything that you said, fits the bill. I want to talk a few minutes about medication. Are there specific medications that doctors prescribe for people that have been diagnosed with FTD, just like there's specific medications that maybe somebody with Alzheimer's disease would take? Or are they just like the same, or do they overlap? Can you talk a little bit about that, Matt?
Yes. Well, there is no cure for FTD. That's number one. But I think you're asking about treatments that can help with some FTD symptoms. And there are medications that can help with certain symptoms. They're not specifically tailored toward the FTD itself, so they're not disease-modifying drugs. But if a person is showing symptoms of depression or things that can be treated with SSRIs or even antipsychotic medications, doctors may prescribe these. And sometimes they help and sometimes they don't, or sometimes they help until they stop helping. So it's one of those things where the caregiver has to be very attentive with their doctor about what kinds of medicines they're taking. There are also non-pharmacological interventions that can help treat certain symptoms of FTD. Maybe not so much treat them, but for example, speech therapy, if they're losing their language, speech therapy could help them to sort of slow their decline a bit. It's not going to reverse the decline, but it could slow the decline. So those are kind of the most effective interventions that there are today. But like I said, no cure and no therapy specific to FTD.
Wow, thank you for explaining all of that. Someone who didn't know what FTD is, that really paints the picture right there with everything that you said. We're going to take a quick break, so everyone stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guests today are joining me from the Association for Frontal Temporal Degeneration in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. We're talking about what is FTD. And thank you, Matt, for explaining all of that to us. I want to go to Brittany now. Brittany Andrews, the fundraising coordinator for AFTD. Brittany, this, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is World FTD Awareness Week. So can you please explain what that means and why do you think we need to have a special week for awareness about FTD?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And I think what Matt had gone into was one of the main reasons why we have to have such a big awareness week is we realize how devastating and, how many people that this affects, and the complexity of this disease really encourages for us to drive AFT's mission, which is a big, awareness aspect. But World FTD Awareness Week really kicked off on Sunday, September 27th, and will be running until October 4th. And it's a week full of events, activism, and engagement. And it's organized every year by the World FTD United, which is an international coalition in which AFTD is a member of. So we have several campaigns that kick off to coincide with this week, and they're all raising awareness of FTD. Two of these campaigns I'll be talking about in a little bit, but I first want to mention what's happening on Saturday, October 3rd. For the first time ever, AFTD will be participating in World FTD Marathon, which is going to encompass presenters from all over the world, providing information about FTD, its different subtypes, any latest guidance about managing the disease, information about research and treatments, as well as providing some hope and a little bit of support to all the people that this really affects, and as well as spreading awareness and education. And so it's free to everyone, and it's easy to sign up if you want to sign up on our website to join and learn a bit more about it. In such a year where things are so virtually connected, it'll be a great way to foster connection and engagement with people really all over the world, and as a way to better understand the complexity of this disease.
So October 3rd, the special event, and it's virtual, right? So anybody can get in and participate. Why don't you go ahead and give your website, if that's the best place for people to find out more about this?
Sure, absolutely. It's www.theaftd.org.
Okay.
You can find more information about our World FTD Awareness Week, as well as how to join the World FTD Marathon.
So this is the first time you've had such a marathon?
This is the first time that the World FTD United has put on the World FTD Marathon. And I think it really was engaged from such a virtual year, and promoting, all of this technology that we're engaging in, and trying to adjust to such a year where virtual connection is key. So presenters, all over the world will be helping to spread awareness for FTD.
All right, well, we want to definitely help you promote that, because that sounds like a wonderful thing. So you're the fundraising coordinator, so part of your job is to not only get the word out, but to raise funds for your organization. So you have a lot going on. I know this because this is a special week. You're extra busy with all of your events, and I want to talk about a couple of those that I find very intriguing. The first one is called Food for Thought. What is this event, and how does it relate to FTD?
Absolutely. So it is our annual campaign. This is our 8th year hosting, and it is our Grassroots Fundraising and Awareness campaign, and it's always timed with World FTD Awareness Week. So it geared off again on September 27th, but it will be going one additional week to October 11th, and hosts all over the country get involved by spreading awareness and raising funds for our mission. And it's also a really great way to, make people understand within their own communities about the devastating effects of this disease, as well as how it affects everyone who's been on this journey before and will go on this journey. That way that we can help to, drive a cure. But the theme for every year for Food for Thought is always centered around food and building connection with others, as well as, spreading FTD awareness. This year, we kind of had to add a different element to it because of the pandemic that's going on. And we wanted to put our hosts' safety and comfortability as a first option. So we really encouraged people to host virtual events this year. And hosts have been coming up with really creative and wonderful ideas on getting involved. It's been wonderful to see how within such a year, hosts have been coming forward and still wanting to raise awareness for our shared mission. So it's been wonderful to see.
So explain to me how you raise the money. If it's around food and it's a virtual thing, how would someone actually raise money for the organization?
Absolutely. So I'd love to give some examples of some of the wonderful events our hosts are having. For example, one of our volunteers started a fundraiser, and they had said, if you make a donation to AFTD's mission, then I will send you a preset recipe where you can go out and buy the food. And then they will gather on a Zoom call at a set date, and they will all be making the food together. So I thought that was a really great way to raise awareness and funds, but also to bring people together virtually and build and foster connection, of course.
That's great. That's great. I want to go to Dawn now. Dawn is actually a volunteer for the organization. And I first met Dawn because I reached out when I received an email about your organization and the campaigns that you were doing. And Dawn was the first person that I was connected with, and she was lovely. And we had a chance to email and then talk. Dawn, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So you're a volunteer. First of all, I want to ask you, why do you volunteer for FTD?
So my father has FTD, and from when we figured out something was going wrong with him to now, it's a struggle, and nobody around where I live have ever heard of FTD. We never knew anything about it. When we finally got this diagnosis, it was researching it by ourselves, and before finding AFTD, we felt very alone. So since my family's got this whole thing, I don't want to see other people go through the same struggle. So for me, I wanted to do whatever I can do to help, whether it be a meet and greet with people and talk them and give them ideas, and just they're not.
That's good. I'm sorry to hear your father has been diagnosed with FTD, but the fact that you're out there and you're volunteering and helping spread awareness is wonderful. And you're actually working with Brittany and helping people to make up their fundraisers. And so you have been talking to anybody that has questions about it, and you explain how they can do it. So I thank you for that. It takes a village, right? Nobody can do this on their own, and we all need to connect with others. Brittany, you were talking about it all centers around food, and I've been thinking about my own type of fundraiser that I could do to promote awareness, because I'm all about promoting and educating on all types of dementias. Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, just, all different kinds, even Parkinson's disease can cause dementia, and FTD. So when I heard food for thought, it was kind of a play on words for me, because I'm thinking food for thought for your brain. And if I were to do something to center around food, I would definitely be doing something with all the superfoods that are good for the brain. And I would encourage people, let's get together, or let's make food that have these ingredients, because we want to talk about foods that are good for us. And a lot of foods are superfoods and they're good for our body. And the scientists say that whatever's good for our body is good for our brain, right? Because certain foods will lower our blood pressure, certain foods will help with heart diseases. And of course, that's all good for our brain because inflammation is a bad thing, whether it's in your body or your brain. So I was thinking about this, and I think I'm going to be pushing people to make a dinner or lunch, and for instance, salmon with walnuts. Now, you can have salmon encrusted with walnuts baked in the oven, and salmon and walnuts both have omega-3s, which are wonderful for brain function, and they help to promote that. And then we're talking about the superfoods like the greens, like the kale and the spinach and the broccoli. And all of these things are actually shown to promote healthy brain function. Berries, the berries, the blueberries, the strawberries, the raspberries, they have antioxidants, and those are good things, and they improve our brain function. Even bread, you forget the white bread, but the whole grains are shown to help our brains better concentrate and to focus better. So we want to include those whole grains. And I just have to tell you, two of my favorites of all time that are good for your body and your brain: dark chocolate and red wine. And those are two of my favorites, in moderation, of course, because they're both good for your body. They're both good for your brain. They're good for your mood, whatever ails you. So I think I'm going to plan, Dawn, a party to raise money and use these foods and make a toast to awareness for FTD with my red wine and my dark chocolate for dessert. How about that?
That's it.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more to the representatives of this wonderful organization out of King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, who are doing grassroots awareness and World Awareness Week for FTD. When we come back, there's a lot more to talk about. So don't go away. I'll see you in just a moment.
Host Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiver. Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CaregiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
At this time, I'd like to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care because memory care is all they do. They have about 50 memory care assisted livings throughout the United States, 10 of them here in Florida. And they are a great resource for caregivers. Not only do they help take care of your loved one that has the memory loss, but they do a lot for the caregivers as well. And today they'd like to offer you, the family caregiver, this free book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. It has lots of great information and tips regarding definitions, how to handle situations, what's going on, what to expect as you go along your journey of caregiving. The book is absolutely free just for the asking, and all you have to do is send an email and let them know your address, your name, and your phone number, and they'll be happy to ship one right away to your home. So the email address to get this free book is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, the email address is delray, DELRAY, at arden-courts.com. So send an email, get the book, and you'll be really glad you did. I highly recommend this. It's a wonderful resource to help caregivers. So my special guests today are from the Association for Frontal Temporal Degeneration out of King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Brittany Andrews, Matt Ozga, and Don O'Gara. And thank you all again for being here. It's lovely to see all of you. Matt, I want to go back to you. We were talking about signs and symptoms of people that have been diagnosed with FTD, and we talked a little bit about medications and what we can do to try to help. But is there hope for a cure? Do clinical trials exist to try to find a cure for this particular disease?
Yes, there are, and we absolutely have hope for a cure. There's actually a first round of clinical trials that are just beginning for potentially disease-modifying treatments. Several of them are actually recruiting now, and then there are a couple others that will begin in the coming months. So these trials are available. Some of them are open, just kind of a handful now, but the idea is for more to crop up in the coming months. And for more information on that, we have a research and clinical trials section of our website that can be helpful as sort of a list of the ongoing clinical trials. There's also we have, in partnership with an organization called the Bluefield Project to Cure FTD, a few years ago we launched what's known as an Ftd Disorders Registry, which is something that it's a secure website. You can go to it and kind of tell your FTD story. And the idea is to have kind of a repository of all these stories about FTD, whether you're a person diagnosed, a caregiver, a spouse, even like a friend of a person who has FTD. And the idea is to tell all these stories and kind of inform scientists of what people who are living with this disease actually go through. And I mention this because this is a way to get updates from AFTD about clinical trials that are happening and research opportunities that are happening. So that's another way to do it. It will connect you with all kinds of future opportunities to participate in research. But to answer your question, yes, we have hope for a cure, and there are trials ongoing, and fingers crossed.
So is there an estimated number of people that are suffering with FTD now, or is there any way to approximate that?
The current estimates in the United States are around 50 to 60,000. In terms of actual people who have the disease, that seems like an undercount, because this FTD is notoriously hard to diagnose, as I'm sure Dawn knows. People go through the average time from onset to getting a proper diagnosis is something like 3.5 years, because it's so often misdiagnosed as depression or some other mental illness. It could be misdiagnosed as bipolar or schizophrenia, or just someone acting out because of a midlife crisis or something. So we think it's probably a bit higher than that 60,000 average. It is still a rare disease, so it's not nearly as prevalent as some other diseases. But it's in terms of its impact on families, it's sort of immeasurable.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of younger people are affected by this particular disease. Is there an estimate of life expectancy? Like how long would it last in somebody before they actually, died with it?
Yes, but again, this is sort of notoriously difficult to ascertain. What we say officially is something like 7 to 13 years, which is itself a pretty big window. But that's from symptom onset until the first person unfortunately passes away. But we've seen it as young as 2 years, and we've seen cases where people with FTD live for another 20 years. There's really no two cases of FTD are alike, and we're still trying to figure out, why disease progresses in different ways for different people. But that 7 to 13 years is kind of based on our experience and our research. That's what that tells us.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pinpoint, when it's all over the place, and hard to help families when, the time frame is really elusive. So Brittany, now that, Matt's talked about these clinical trials that they're doing, there's got to be a way to fund these, and that's where you come in, because you're the actual fundraising coordinator for the FTD there in King of Prussia, and helping make this something that's going to raise awareness and raise funds. And we want to do that so that we can continue to offer clinical trials for this particular disease that is so insidious. That being said, we talked about your Food for Thought campaign, but you have another one that I think has a cute name. It's called the Hot Shot Challenge. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. So the hashtag FTD Hotshot Challenge was started by one of our volunteers and really gained momentum within our community. And it really encompasses the idea of social media and hot sauce. And it really is quite simple. Take a shot of hot sauce, upload it to any of your social media pages, tag 5 friends to challenge them, and then donate to AFTD if you have the means. It's been wonderful to see, as it coincides with World FTD Awareness Week, how much awareness this has brought already, and as well as how much funds it's already raised for our mission. It's been great to see the momentum, and we're interested to see as this becomes more of a viral challenge. We are excited to see the results. And additionally, we had something exciting happening on Sunday, as sponsored by one of our generous donors. We were able to announce and introduce World FTD Awareness Week and the hashtag FTD Hotshot Challenge within the New York Times in their print edition. And then today, it was also on one of their digital ads. And it was great that we were able to feature some of our community members within that, as well as, do a little bit more promotion on this hashtag FTD Hotshot Challenge.
Oh, that's great. Well, I know some people, have a couple sons that love, love, love hot sauce. The hotter, the better. So, that's an in. If you know someone that actually likes the hot sauce, they'll be really glad to take the challenge. But I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging for somebody like me who doesn't like the spicy, but I would do it for a good cause.
We are saying that, if hot sauce isn't part of your diet or any other restrictions, you can use ketchup. It's just really about, taking part in the challenge and the movement, and then, getting others to do the same. So whatever you're most comfortable with is okay with us.
Well, I will try. The hot sauce, there's so many of them, and I know, that's a great challenge. People will really go for that. So, Dawn, you're a volunteer for the organization. What's your favorite fundraiser that you've been involved in with trying to make awareness and raise money for the organization?
Well, today I'm kind of excited to try that hot shot challenge, and I'm challenging my son to that. Outside of that, I know in February I might get the name, the Love one, where everybody kind of writes their story about it, about their experience in FTD. And that one I really like. I like seeing other people's experiences and knowing, like I said, you're not alone, but just people sharing. And I don't know, Brittany, you can probably correct the name on that one.
It's our With Love fundraiser.
That's wonderful. People can get very creative, and when they get passionate about something and get passionate for a cause, they can get creative. And I think all of these are very creative ways and to help raise the awareness for World FTD Awareness Week that we're in right now. And I'm glad to be talking about it. We're going to take a real quick last break, and when we come back, Dawn's going to share with us her personal story about what FTD means to her and her family and the challenges that they're facing dealing with this terrible disease. So we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guests today are from the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and we're talking about what FTD is, frontotemporal degeneration, and getting people more aware about it. And joining them, we have Matt, we have Brittany, but also we have a volunteer. And Dawn is a volunteer with the organization, and she had mentioned that her father was actually diagnosed with FTD. Dawn, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. Would you mind sharing with us what age your father was diagnosed and what age he is now?
So he was diagnosed, I believe he was 64 when he was diagnosed, and he's 71 now. But I will say, like, we go back, one of the things that's hard to find the diagnosis is, as they say, the onset of symptoms, but it's figuring out when those symptoms even started. Because way before the diagnosis, he started just being someone different. Where, like, my mom might be like, oh, your dad's being a jerk today. Or we're going, why is dad so mean today? Even his grandkids are doing the same thing. Like, he just wasn't himself anymore. Or he'd do strange things, like shutting off all the lights in the TV, even though you're sitting there watching it and you're in the room. Or eating everything in sight, like planning to go to McDonald's 4 times a day, like just things that weren't him. And my dad was a military man, like things always went the same, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. So I think just getting to the point where you can even take him to the doctors and say something's wrong is a journey in itself, because he didn't know anything was wrong with him. He thought everything was normal.
So it took a long time to get the correct diagnosis, is what you had said. And once they finally did give that diagnosis, what was the family's reaction?
What is FTD? Because, like I said, we had no idea what FTD was. Nobody around us had any idea. Like, I'm in Massachusetts, and we ended up having to take him into Boston, MGH, to actually get the diagnosis confirmed. And it's great that the doctors there that knew us and were able to give us the education we needed and point us in the right direction, figure it out. And I'd say also with that, like, figuring out all those in the family, you tell anybody has anything under the dementia umbrella. And like Matt said earlier, they automatically think, oh, so he doesn't remember you. And that's not what my dad still knows who we are. After the 6 years, what he can't do, he can't brush his own teeth. He doesn't talk anymore. He can't dress himself. It's those things. And in the beginning, it was all behavioral, not memory. And people don't understand that or get offended in a way because you can't leave him alone. It's like going to the store with a child. You can't turn your back on him, but he's a grown man. So it makes it very hard and almost like you feel like you're being judged to take him anywhere, but you don't want to up at home either. It's just really hard.
So your mom was the primary caregiver for a long time, and how did she hold up with that, and how is she coping?
I would say my mom she did okay, and then I mean it takes it's a strain on you both physically and mentally. So for her, they weren't even ready. Like they were getting ready to retire. They had this great retirement plan for after travel, love to travel, and there was a lot of sadness because all of a sudden all of that is gone. Everything's gone. They both retire early, and then she's taking care, like I said, almost like a child. You have to know you can't have your fifth popsicle in an hour. Put it back and go brush your teeth. I put the toothpaste on your toothbrush to brush your teeth, like things like that. So it became very stressful on her, where she was like she was sad, she was stressed out, angry many times, and she meant to be, but what kind of it does to you. And then it get physical she could do, and we did have to put him in a nursing home a couple of years ago. But we're still a member of the family until COVID happened is at that nursing home every day, making sure he's getting taken care of. We still do a lot of the care ourselves. He just kind of needed that extra staff there for one, a break from my mom, and two, just the physical needs he needed.
So
Which
that
might be
must have been
changing.
Yes, and it's especially difficult in the last, this past year, being in a nursing home or in a care facility because of COVID-19. So that puts a lot more stress on everyone, right? Not being able to visit and things like that. But you mentioned to me off air that you're thinking about taking him home with you to take care of him. How do you think that's going to affect you and your family?
Well, the good thing, family is on board. Like, we've had this discussion a few times in the past, just like, could it be reality? Can we make that happen? We have come to the decision that, yeah, if we need to, we can. And the good thing is my siblings, my mom, same town. They're only 7 minutes from me in different directions. So the help is there. And my daughter that's home with me, she's 17. She's all willing to help. And I have a niece who's about to be CNA certified who's willing to come over here and help with types of things. So I think especially with COVID happening, we will end up doing that. Next a family meeting to discuss that. But I think we forward with that and we'll just make it work. I think it'll be him and us.
Well, all the best to you and your family as you struggle with this caregiving. It enlightens to all of us, the trials and tribulations and the heartaches that go along with this disease. And therefore, we're talking about it. It's World FTD Awareness Week, and Brittany and Matt are up in King of Prussia. You're in Massachusetts. So, we can all gather together as one group to make everybody aware and promote this. And that's what we're attempting to do as we go along this week and then further down the line. Because Brittany, I'm sure you always have things going on to make people aware and to fundraise for this organization. What else is on your plate, Brittany, for after World FTD Awareness Week? What happens after that? I know you just don't stop doing anything. What's on your radar?
Of course. Thank you for asking that. Like Dawn had mentioned, we do have another nationally branded campaign in February, and it's titled With Love. And it's really centered around sharing your story. And it's really quite a motive fundraiser where people really write quite beautiful things about their loved one with FTD. And it is quite a big fundraiser that drives a lot of funds for our mission. Other than that, we do a lot of people come to us with their own ideas, which I help to facilitate, and that can look like anything from a golf tournament to a bake sale. So they really range in any kind of type of fundraiser, which is all year long that we help promote it.
Well, great. Well, good. Everybody get into that and get active, whatever your passion is. Matt, you're the FTD communication manager, so I'm sure you are out there always communicating about the disease and awareness and what people can do and everything we've talked about today. And you also probably talk to a lot of caregivers in that process. So what would you say to Dawn? You've heard Dawn talk about the fact that her father was diagnosed and the family struggling with the care. Any words of advice or encouragement for her that you could give, Matt?
I mean, I'm just glad that Dawn, that you found AFTD, because I know that is really that's something that we hear so often, is just this disease can be so isolating, and the fact that no one knows really what it is, you almost feel like you're out on an island somewhere. So that you were able to find AFTD and got connected with Brittany and with other people in this organization, just being able to talk to someone else who understands the language of FTD, who knows that this is who understands what literally probably a tiny fraction of people understand. That's for so many people in our community. That's the most. That's really the core of the value that they get from finding our organization.
Yeah, it's the connections you make, because like the support groups and the connections that you make. So that being said, Matt, if people want to get more information about anything we've talked about today, they want to go to your website, or maybe they even want to call the helpline. Can you give that information out, please?
Yes, our website is theaftd.org, theaftd.org. You can follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There is and you mentioned the helpline. Thank you for that. The helpline is essentially a kind of a hotline. It's not 24/7, but you will get a response quickly. And the phone number is on our website. It's eluding me at the moment, but you can email info@theaftd.org. And then if you do go to our website, it will be prominent at the top of the phone number itself will be prominent.
Well, I did visit your website, and I do have the helpline. I'm going to tell everybody it's 866-507-7222. And if you want some help, call the FTD helpline. Thank you all for being with us today on the Caregiver Solution Info Show. I appreciate all of you and what you do, and all of your expertise and your information that you're sharing. Good luck with the rest of World FTD Awareness Week and all the other challenges you have coming down the line. Brittany, Matt, Dawn, thank you so very much, and wish you all the best and stay well.
You too.
Well, thank you, Marcia.
And thank you all for joining today. Thanks for tuning in to caregiversolutions.info or listening on the iHeartRadio app under WNN. We'll be back another week for another wonderful show. And in the meantime, stay safe. Give everyone a virtual hug, because you can't get too close. Continue to social distance. Don't forget to email Arden Courts for your free 36-hour day book at delray@arden-courts.com. So get out there, take your challenge, get the hot shot down, help raise money and awareness for FTD. Thank you all again. Appreciate you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.